Welcome to GrabLives, everyone. I'm your host, John Vargas. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your love and support. Just to start off with our disclaimer, everything we say and do in this podcast platform has nothing to do with the views or the opinions of the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. And I just want to thank everyone for your support. Please like and subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, and Apple platforms. Helps the algorithm. Helps things to move to where it can help someone who needs to hear this. And if you guys are active on Instagram, please comment and like, because it helps things kind of create more openness with the algorithm and transitions a video or a clip that maybe help someone who's like struggling with suicide ideation or just in the depths of their own darkness. And I've had people reach out to me and told me they saw a clip of me and like whatever I had said had helped them. So that really does help, guys. Thank you for people who listen. It's really helpful for me. And yeah, so I am having Lisa Mercier on the podcast again. She's been on a few times and we've grown such a great friendship, and I can have her on and have conversations for like 3 hours. So she's a medium, a Reiki master, and also does past life regression. So she has got a very unique avenue, but she had specialized in working with firefighters and police officers. Also, she works for Premier First Responders with Dr. Heather Williams and her team on critical incident management. So, you know, she's been involved in a lot of incidents and has helped a lot of people where she can answer questions that seemed unanswered. And when we talk, we really focus on really personal evolution, personal empowerment, and maybe the small nuances and the hidden messages that we're not receiving when we can break things open, take them apart, put them back together in a conversation. So it's always a fascinating conversation with Lisa, and she's become such a dear friend to my family. So I hope you guys like the episode. Please just listen in. It's a longer episode, but whatever. It works out. Love you guys. Take care.
It's time for Grab Lives.
All right. Lisa Mercier. Am I saying that wrong?
No, I mean, yes.
Mercier.
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 Yeah, the fancy way is Mercier, but
Got it.
just think of Mercy or Mercier.
All right. Well,
Back again.
yeah, Lisa, it's funny, we were just talking and then we're recording the episode already.
Yeah.
We always do that. So, yeah, just to, remap what we had talked about last time. Like, I just got back from the Palisades and then I was like, you were worried about me. I was fine.
We had a date to record.
Yeah.
And then the fire started and I was like checking on you, and you of course were working and not responding. But then day of our time to record, I was like, are you sure you want to do this? And you were like, I haven't slept and I'm not going to. If I sleep, we're never going to do this. So let's just come over and let's record. And so here we are a year later.
Yeah. We're doing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've known each other for what, like 2 years now? Maybe a little over 2 years?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah, a lot has transpired since then.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking a lot about politics and like the perception of the fire department with what's actually happening. And it's such a strange world because people are afraid to be honest, which does not provide a good like wavelength of a place to operate in at a department scale and at like an individual level. And I think everyone's really sick of the dishonesty, but I think it's exposing it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's strange when we're talking about like, the mayor and like the city and like, how, something like a Palisades, like a huge fire that disrupts wealthy people,
Mm-hmm.
because those are the people who are going to start making noise.
Right.
And I think that's what's happening right now is like once you piss off rich white people in the Jewish community who pretty much own most of
Yeah.
LA, it starts, ruffling some feathers and then starts disturbing who's in charge and who's making these decisions. And I think overall, I've come to the conclusion that I believe the mayor is actually not in charge. Why is this person, in charge of $1 trillion city? There's someone bigger pulling the strings behind her as a forefront, and I can't blame her, beyond some ignorance and stupidity. But I think there's something beyond controlling that,
Well, and I had asked you, what is the morale like at your department or kind of in general with LA?
Yeah.
And you said it's not good.
No, it's not. I don't think it is. This last year, I mean, I just worked with a gentleman who works for our union. He's heavily involved, and we had that conversation, and the answer, he tries really hard to get solutions. And I told him, I was like, I'm a man built on solutions. I'm tired of like labeling things and saying this is the problem. I want to create, the answers to the problems rather than just, fixating on the problems, because that's a loop in itself. And within a loop, there's a cycle. And the cycle that's ending right now, I think, is the lack of continuity and these old paradigms where it was like the good old boys club. And that's kind of what's been unraveling right now, is that good old boys club has been revealed. And just these old traditions, the way we used to do things, it's not valid anymore, and it doesn't take in the common working man. There's just a lot of bleeding hearts leaving it all out there without the gratitude and the you're just seen as a number, and that hurts.
Yeah.
Well,
I brought this up to ask you how morale was, because I've been hearing lots of interviews of, chiefs and higher ups within the fire department. And I just immediately think of the real ones, like the actual firefighters who got in it for the right reasons, who are decent people working really hard with not a lot to show for it, and kind of feeling hung out to dry in this situation. And I still believe that although what happened last year was just unbelievably horrific, that there's an opportunity to make it better, and that literally things have to burn down in order to be rebuilt in accordance with higher vibration, with light, with love, with truth, with honesty. And sometimes these horrible things have to happen so that all this shit can get exposed. And so that's exactly what's happening right now. And it's painful because you guys are still there. You have to go every day. You have to do your job. You can't phone it in like some of the higher ups do, in my opinion. You can't do that. And so it's annoying to say, but I really want to say to everybody, hang in there if you can.
Yeah.
Because like I said to you, like it can't get much worse. And I'm not tempting the universe with that statement, but it's bad. Let it be bad. Let it be bad with the mindset. Individually, you have the mindset that, you know what, this whole department is going up in flames. It's awful, but I'm glad that we're here because now we've pushed it to this point, and so now we can get better. Like it was a slow burn to get to exposing it all. Well, now we're here. Now it's all exposed. So we got through a huge hurdle, and now change has the opportunity to set in. And that to me, I feel intuitively is like, oh, the silver lining, good is coming. I don't know how long it will take, but it's good that it's all coming out now. All of it, from city politics to fire to police, to all of it, all structures are crumbling. And that, as scary as it is to live through and be aware of in real time as it's happening, it has to be this way so that multiple sets of eyes can be on it and call it out and create change.
Amen. I'm glad you just put that so perfectly. and you reframed things that people just want to say those things. They just don't know how to say it. They don't know how to get it out. And I think it's let's just go into honesty about it. You know, it's just that's where my thing is like, dude, just speak the truth. You know, like with these mayors and politicians, it's a money grubbing, greedy, polarizing place, you know, so people get irritated because they just want to hear like, just stop feeding me bullshit is like where it's at, where it's the anchor point where people are at. And that's where I think a lot of the distortion comes and static. And that's what causes confusion. And then there's the uproar through confusion, but there's never any clarity around it. So which is the problem? You know, people want clarity. And within themselves, within their lives, within their environment, where are we paying where are our taxes going? You know, like that's a big question that no one can really answer you. Like, you know, let's just talk about politics for a second. I guess we're going to talk about that now. But Gavin Newsom, like, you want an answer from this guy. Hey, man, where are my taxes going? We pay a lot of taxes, and you know, you for some reason can't find a reference for the money you've spent on homeless people. That's a big one.
Yep. And
people are upset about that, man. And because it's a big problem throughout the whole state of California. And I follow pretty advanced numerologist and Chinese astrologist, and they have predicted that California was going to have a catastrophe in the year of 2024. So the reason why is because California was founded in the year of the dog, and that year was a dragon year, which dragon is enemy of the dog. And so it waited to the very end. And usually at the end of a Chinese zodiac year is where you get the full threshold of that archetype. So the archetype of the dragon, right? It's a fire-breathing mystical creature. And well, lo and behold, what happened? You got a pretty big catastrophe. You had a fire that had erupted in a pretty wealthy community. So that was foretold, like years before that was foretold. Hey, someone's like, hey, that's going to happen. Huge catastrophe. Get ready for it. So one of the big things is about snake years. We're in a snake year now. And they always say like big, huge events happen in snake years. Like the last snake year prior to this, there was like a huge typhoon in the Philippines. Hundreds of people died. Before that, it was 9/11.
Wow.
Before that, it was the Berlin Wall fell. So it's like the snake, it's about shedding, releasing old things that need to crumble. Kind of it's exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, these are just cycles that have been referenced for a long time. And, you know, I'm built on trying to bring ancient wisdom on the forefront of the quantum frontier. And I want to keep that as a reference for, you know, that's where we're headed. We're on the cliffside of worlds emerging and kind of debunking themselves. We're at the edge right now. And that's where we're headed, really, is in this quantum reality, because AI is taking the forefront, and that's just where we're headed. And you know, I hope that can be still tethered into the kitchen table at Firehouse kind of like conversation, because, you know, we have to release control of these old viewpoints, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and we should also individually let ourselves change, because if we are continuing or insisting on holding the same beliefs, holding the same mindsets, doing the same routines, not improving things within ourselves, then we're going to have a really hard time with the transition of the collective. So which I already see that happening. I see it, you know, I see, you know, people screaming and shouting over things that they're angry about or protesting over. And I have many reactions to this, but I have an underlying sense of, oh no, I feel bad for you, because you're so unwilling to step out of your body for a second and look at the big picture of what's going on. And if, you know, let's stick with California and like political stuff for a second. If you're so caught up in doing it the same way, and this is how politicians have to act and look and sound, and we have to toe the line and we have to smile, even when everyone's house burned down, that you're setting yourself up to have a very, very hard existence, because the collective will move you along, and you're either going to, kick your feet up and float down the river, or you're going to be tumbling, head over feet over and over and over again. So we also have to be um, honest with our own, where am I at? Checking myself, where am I at? What do I like about myself? What am I doing well? What am I sick of? What can I change? First and foremost, it has to start within, and then our outer world starts to reflect that change. And so in the middle of chaos at the department and low morale and loss of respect for leadership, that can be true. And double down on improving all of those things within yourself. And then energetically watch how it shifts, or watch how the universe then supports you in that change and removes leaders that aren't fit for duty anymore. Or, you get a different opportunity within your line of work. But we have to do that internally first, or the universe will then step in and force the change. And that is much harder to go with. We don't like that as humans. And so let it. I keep saying this to people that I work with, and it's coming from spirit, but the message of let yourself change just keeps coming up over and over and over again. Let yourself change. Let yourself change.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, the only constant is change. And that's like been referenced as the mystery of it all. We have this tendency through our linear way of thinking to want to control change or control things. And that's really not where it's at. And I had a really hard wall this year with that. And, I do want to go back and first let everyone know like who Lisa is.
Oh yeah, we should do that.
Before we start going into the conversation. But yeah, I think with change, like it's one of the hardest things. But Lisa is a medium, a Reiki master who works with firefighters to help them understand like the complexity of like what's happening around them besides like your inner struggle with psychology. There's more to that. And we want to kind of blend in like the best of both worlds, like the unseen world is tangible still. And with firefighters, we're in this world, like working in the underworld in the darkness for it's a lack of a better term, but she's helpful with that. You have anything else you want to say about that?
I have found it. I work with lots of first responders, and I have found that the majority of, I'll just generalize for a second, the majority of you all are incredibly sensitive humans. And I don't mean sensitive like always in your feelings. I mean sensitive like empathic. So you feel energies. You absorb energies. And that's arguably what kind of unconsciously led you into this field, is because the empath loves to help, is a doer, is a fixer, is a problem solver. And so one of the things that I help with firefighters specifically, especially with Reiki, is just kind of understanding your own energetic self, learning the language, being able to articulate, just understanding why you feel the way that you feel, why you are the way that you are, what drives you, and then how to protect your energy. Because to be a firefighter, to be open, energetically exposed in your aura, to absorb or pick up on all of the things that you see on shift, that's a lot. So you're not just exhausted physically and emotionally from the job, but you're mostly exhausted from all the energy that you are unconsciously storing, that you've kind of picked up along the way. And so I do a lot of teaching, educating about how to be mindful of your energy, how to protect your energy.
Yeah, kind of like energetic hygiene.
Exactly.
I think it's really important. I mean, think about all the EMF we're exposed to, like man-made frequencies affect the human organism. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're leading on to understanding like this biofield that is around us. And we have to be honest with ourselves of what that is, and simple and complex, grounded way to approach that, rather than the esoteric that can kind of pull us away from reality. I think a lot of people, our brains are designed to just use a fixation around something to escape our reality. And that's not really what we're doing. It's more of like an educational, like understanding of, hey, you should probably go into nature after work because you've been inside of a station the entire time, inside hospitals with artificial light. And when you're in nature, guys usually kind of already lean into that because you feel great after, and it helps you just kind of let go of that part of your world. And one thing I do like about being a firefighter is like, I don't really bring work home with me. I can just leave all of that there. And that's something I kind of subconsciously constructed over time, because I know some people like who don't have this type of career, they bring work home with them. They're always doing emails, and that's a lot, I think. So it is nice to just, when I'm done with work, leave it all there. And when I come home, I'm able to decompress, and I have certain practices, but this has all been titrated over a while where I had to learn like how to readjust myself. And it's still become more of like a finite skill that I'm learning to hone in. And it's gone down to more so like my behavior and taking down that hypervigilance, because that's still there. And it's just, it's refining what that is. And that hypervigilance thing, it goes down to the nervous system. And so I think that's a really key point. And it's been kind of swept around on the internet around, first responder mental health. They talk about hypervigilance and stuff, but there's just not much understanding around it and put into context. Like a lot of people are talking about it, but there's no context that's being played in. And when we talk about context, one of my teachers had explained to me like saying the phrase, the king and the queen, they died. Okay, that's a great phrase. And that's kind of what we're hearing. The firefighters have hypervigilance. Okay, the king and the queen died of a broken heart. Now that is put into context. And what we're saying, like things like firefighters have hypervigilance. Oh, okay, well, can you explain a little more? Put it into context, please. Well, hypervigilance is this ability for your nervous system on overdrive. It's overstimulated, and this is going on for a long period of time. It's not just a one isolated event. This is something that's driving a sympathetic response to where that's where chronic pain comes in. That's where you have headaches. This is where you start having lack of sleep. This is where you start struggling. This is where the breaker pops. That's put into context. Mm-hmm. But I'm not seeing, I'm seeing a lot of labels. I'm seeing a lot of diagnosis. I'm not seeing relation. And so going on from like how we talk about this, is just conversation, and a conversation from personal experience. I think that's where people are leaning more into rather than just getting sucked into like this clickbait, and buzzwords. But Lisa's great. I mean, I am very careful with when I work with people who touch my body or work on my body. Mm-hmm. So I know sometimes I'm like, dude, I'll be talking to Haley and I'll be like, I think I need to go see Lisa. And I saw her this year, and it was like the perfect just button up therapy I needed. And it was just like a Reiki session to kind of seal everything together. It was perfect.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you brought that up about like the buzzwords. It's such a pet peeve, but pet peeve is not even a strong enough phrase for me. I get so annoyed with people that use these buzzwords, and they're trendy, but they don't, it's a surface level. And that doesn't help anybody. That frustrates people more, because you're like, yeah, I'm hypervigilant. Yeah, I can't sleep. Yeah, I have stomach issues. Yeah, I'm just like ready to go. I'm just buzzing in my body because I'm just so on all the time. Stop saying that. I know that. Now what? Like, help me, or talk about it. Help me learn the language about it. Help me learn how to talk to myself and coach myself through that experience. Help teach me how to take my body from sympathetic to parasympathetic. What can I do? And more than just take slow, deep breaths, because that also drives me crazy. Although breaths are the easiest way, we need to go beyond that. And my favorite thing is to like remind people or teach people how to use what's already in their environment to help them. Because my time is very structured. And so anytime advice is given to like adopt a new practice or start doing something new kind of outside of your daily routine, it's harder for people to start. So empower your own environment to help you with whatever you need by creating intentions. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's so simple, but if I have a client or a very stressful day, whatever it is, and I just need like a quick energy shift in my body, which really is sympathetic to parasympathetic, because that's all energy. One of my favorite things is I just go wash my hands, but I set the intention that the water and the soap is going to do its job for the germs. The water is going to rinse this excess energy off my body, and then it's going to go down the drain and it leaves me. And that is because I set the intention in my mind that I'm not just washing my hands, but I'm clearing my energy. I'm going from this scene of heightened state into the next scene of more relaxed in my body, in control. And then also what that does for me is then it starts to teach me I can handle myself when I'm in that state. So then I have more agency, I feel more grounded. And so then the next time I'm spiked up again, my body goes, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to talk myself out of this. And so using your own environment to help you with those things is really important. And you can, empower anything that you have around you. Drink water, and tell yourself this sip of water is going to bring the temperature down or bring the energy down. As it goes down my throat into my body, it's going to settle me, calm me. Very simple tasks like that, but we don't know how to do that because no one taught us that. It's just, first responders, they're hypervigilant. They have post-traumatic stress. Like, we feel bad for them. Go talk to your, local, or go talk to your service provider and get the tools you need. And it's going to take, 7 years to feel. No, there are much faster things that you can do and that we can help you with. And it's mostly mastering intentions and mindfulness.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing something that's precise, but that precision is they're just skills, and like, that's the thing too, is like harnessing skill sets is really like how we master our life. And, this is just something from her own personal practice that she does, and for me, like it changes every day. Like, I don't keep the same thing all the time. I do keep some organization to where my body can be like, okay, I know this is an opportunity where I can settle down. However, life is always in that flux of change as well. And that's kind of what we were talking about before we were wanting to introduce you. But change is it's one of the hardest things. And there's this famous quote. It's two things firefighters don't like. It's change in the way things are. And that goes for the common person. So it's because we feel there's a sense that we need to control things because it makes us feel safe. But truly, safety is not really safe. That's the paradox of it. So you have to kind of understand the quality of trust with change. You have to believe within yourself that change is an outcome that may happen. You may be okay with some outcome, and you have to be okay with that. It's like the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown that we have to understand and trust in, that everything's going to be okay. Like there's paranoia and there's pronoia. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes, but remind me. That's like looking for the good, right? Or finding the good things.
Yes. Yeah. So it's paranoia is like you're afraid that something's always going to happen that's bad. And that's the negative, half of the cup that's less than. And then you have the ability to trust that everything, the universe is supporting you, number one, and everything you do is going to happen in a good way. So there's a fixed expectation around that, but you're shifting your mindset into a more positive wavelength, which everything is all about your belief systems and how you perceive reality. And this last year, man, it took me for a wild turn on my perception of reality, to where it started crumbling identities. It started crumbling my perceptions on things. And it was an internal unraveling that was devastating, because I had to face the creations I had made that weren't true, and I can give an example, like I had created this version of my mother that is not true for who she is today. And there was some grief around that. And I had to come to that realization, like, man, I am a creator of my reality, but if I am not creating something that's not true, then there's just a lot of falsehood around that. And it's devastating to the system. It's devastating to how I perceive things. And it's a lot about taking ownership for what we create that is not true. And one of the things as well is, if we go against natural law and we go against natural or universal law, that's where we create pain. And I had to come to a realization with that as well. Like, how can I come into natural order? And a lot of it was with my body. So I know that this was like a long year for a lot of people too. It wasn't just myself. I felt a lot of people telling me like, "Oh, I'm having a hard time this year," because we were forced to see what we're going against, and we have to reposition ourselves. And so I don't know if you had any expectations or things like that this year that kind of put you at a halt.
I don't think I had one. I can't think of like a specific. 2 years ago was a harder year for me because I had some pretty big realizations about my role kind of as an empath, as a healer, a helper, a fixer, and kind of my role within family relationships, and kind of how I understood in a different way how my family viewed me, and decided I didn't want to participate. And I have a good relationship with my family, but I call myself the firefighter of the family. So anytime someone's on fire, they call me. And literally, if I had to say, like, don't make me your first phone call. Like, I can't do that anymore, because I recognized things weren't reciprocated, things weren't equal. And that really upset me, because I then thought my relationships are going to struggle or suffer. I'm not going to see my people as much as I want to. And that really wasn't the case. Again, I was creating a narrative around, if I actually change, like, what's going to happen? And then I'm afraid of that, even though it's not a real thing. I'm just creating it in my mind. And so then this past year, 2025, was really me kind of having the realization that I'm contributing to this, like, relationship dynamic of being the firefighter in the group, in the family, amongst my friends. Call Lisa if you're in an emergency. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to have actual friendships. I wanted to have actual family relationships without being kind of used for what I'm good at. And so then 2025 was me asserting that boundary, holding that boundary, and then kind of finding my place with how can I be me with this newfound understanding and realization, and how can I practice saying no and not feeling guilty. And I felt guilty for about 6 months. I felt guilty every time I said, no, I can't do that. Or I'm sorry, I'll just send you love. It felt guilty, cried all the time. I hated it. But the last 6 months of 2025, my body felt the most relaxed it's ever felt. Like, I chronically have knots in my shoulders, and famously, every time I get a massage, they always tell me to relax throughout. And I'm like, I'm on your table. Like, that's your job. Make me relax. No, because they just don't go away. And they finally started to go away because I am more relaxed in my body, because I understand I actually have a say in how I participate, how I show up in these relationships. I can say no, and my body feels relieved now. And so that was like a huge shift for me. And I still feel like I've got kinks to work out with that. And then I can be more discerning of when I actually have time or emotional space in my body to help, to be of service. I haven't turned my back on anybody. I am absolutely going to be there for people, but I'm not going to jump immediately like I used to, because I first have to check in with myself. Because I also found myself for the last 2 years very I haven't done the best job of separating my energy from all the clients that I've worked with, because I'm in it with people. I'm so deeply in it with my clients, and clients always tell me they tell me more than they tell their therapists, which is I value, I love. I am so humbled that people feel safe with me to share things. But it's energy that and then I'll sit with it, and I think about clients way after their sessions, because I'm holding everybody in prayer and meditation, because I can do that. That's part of my gifts. That's part of my spiritual gifts. But then I had to then create more structure around that, because it was taking a toll on me, because then I'm observing people's lives fall apart around me as, clients. And that's a lot to go through. So I've really been fine-tuning that within self, and then pouring that into me. So, like, actually improving my body, working on myself, having more fun, just doing things for me in ways that I haven't in the past. So that's become more clear.
Yeah, it's a lot of refinement. I think that was a theme.
Yeah.
And repositioning a lot of our perspectives. And the body is such a great barometer for how we are perceiving our world and how we construct it. And I had to take a big reposition with my body because I was doing workouts, like isolated workouts, and it just wasn't working. I was creating more pain. And it either would be referred pain to something else. I was like, okay, I have to stop whatever I'm doing and look at how I can work out the body systemically. So right now I'm on the verge of creating a workout regimen that accesses the fascial lines of the body, that works out the body as a whole unit. So if you do have pain in one side of the body, the other part will actually propriocept the other symmetrical version of that injury together. So I'll probably come out with the program like maybe 6 months and get that started for people with chronic pain. And it helps with vagal tone. It's all vagal stimulation because that's the only way our body can feel safe in order for it to fix itself. And I'm against the idea of like going straight to the scalpel, and then also understanding that the body is so intelligent and we have to trust that. But we've lost sight on that practice and that wisdom of knowing what the body's, we just don't know how to speak the language of the body first. And that comes with the nervous system. It's like one of the primary things we have to understand. And it's really fascinating what I've learned over time. And the workouts are fascinating because at the end of some of the workouts, you have to stand in stillness for 2 to 3 minutes, and the body is propriocepting itself. So you're shaking the entire time. And it's almost like a nervous system reset, and the body's recalibrating itself at like a muscular, skeletal, physical level. And then your mind is calm. It's really interesting. And the framework is built on going into like this safety, and like you have no thoughts, which is beautiful. And I think that's one of the things is getting into the body is like one of the best practices because we tend to just get stuck on the mind activity, and to understand what the mind activity is doing is hard because there's no map to understand what mind activity is doing and how to structure it, how to understand it. And people get caught up, they get sucked in to like the lies that our mind is telling us. And then that affects our body if we believe the lies. And so reframing that for people, putting it into context is huge. So, I know people always probably come to you with their problems, but how do you mitigate like a structure for someone with their mind activity? Because that's a big one for us who are always on stress and always in hypervigilance.
Well, a phrase that Spirit gave me a few years back is get out of your head and into your body. And that first came through for me in a meditation because I am in my head a lot. I overthink a lot of things. And I'm also I get downloads all the time because I'm so intuitive that I'm my antenna is like always receiving signals from God, from my spirit guides, from the dead people that I'm, meeting in sessions with clients. I'm kind of split. I'm like in my body as a human, but then I'm also out of my body, having discussions and conversations and healing and all this stuff. So Spirit said to me, get out of your head and into your body. And because personally, something that I was working on a lot was loving my body because I've had a lot of health challenges. And for most of my life, probably up until like 5 years ago, I really hated this body. And I badmouthed her, and I just didn't enjoy the body that I was given. And kind of came to a head in a meditation that this is the body that I got, and my soul chose this body. And so instead of how many more years essentially are you going to waste hating it? Why don't you try loving it? And I was like, how do I do that? And then Spirit said, get out of your head and into your body. But they didn't tell me what that meant. And it's still a phrase literally every day. I think about that phrase and I understand it little by little, more and more and more every day. And one of the biggest things that was kind of a light bulb for me was if I'm just in my head and I'm not in my body, all the ideas that I have, all the intuition that I receive, all the good thoughts or awarenesses that I get are just going to stay up here, and they're not going to transfer down in my body and then create physical change. And so then I kind of like tried to trick myself into going, oh, well, if I accept it and move whatever I have in my brain down into my body, then I'll be more intuitive. And I love to be more intuitive. So I'll try it. I'll try that route. And it worked. It was incredible. But now what happens is when I'm in my head with something, I will kind of close my eyes, or I'll do a practice where I visualize whatever the thoughts are, even if they're negative thoughts. Like, mostly my negative thoughts have to do with self. And so even if it's like I can't think of an example, but like, oh, I look fat today, or, oh, you don't work out enough, or you don't move your body enough. I go, okay, I want to bring that thought down into my body. And I imagine that kind of like collection of thoughts, like transferring down into my body and flowing into my body. And then I say to my body, okay, body, what do you need? What do you want? And then my body tells me how to move, or my body tells me that I need more water, or I need to eat this, or stop eating that. So it's really helped me. And that's something I love to share with people, especially like the cerebral and over analytical, problem solver, helper. We are in our heads a lot because we are actively searching for solutions, even within ourselves. And so I love to tell people and walk them through, get out of your head and into your body. And then the reality is our intuition speaks to us through our bodies. So if we are not connected to our body, whether it's through stress or trauma, because trauma separates people from their sense of self. People get really good at disassociating. People love to jump out of their body and go daydream or be disconnected and go on autopilot throughout their life. And so one of the things that we do work on, and that Reiki is really good for helping people get back into their body, because you can feel the Reiki energy in you. And I always tell people like what to expect before a Reiki session, what you might feel in your body. And it's really amazing because people that may not have tried Reiki or believed in Reiki will come have a session with me and go, my feet were tingly the whole time. That was so crazy. Or I had a new client the other day and he was like, I could feel from my head all the way to my feet like waves. And I didn't know what it was. And then I remembered you said, oh, I might have a physical reaction to the Reiki. And so teaching people in a safe setting how to be in their body that's something that I love to work on with people. And that by itself helps you feel calmer. It helps you sort through the thoughts and decide, are these thoughts that I actually have to think about? Or is there anything that I need to be doing with these thoughts? No, I'm going to let them leave. I'm going to make room in my body for thoughts to come in that are productive or that are helpful. So naturally, by learning how to be in our bodies, we become more intuitive, and then we become better at triaging those excess thoughts that are coming in.
I like the word triaging. It's so true. Yeah. You know, like I was just feeling like a bunch of lies at maybe this little pocket of time a week ago. It was because I've been threatening my identity for quite some time. More so because I'm at that place in my personal evolution within myself that is challenging that version of myself that I had supported for a long time. But I'm at the precipice where that version of me is no longer valuable because it's built on a lot of falsehood. There's no foundation for which I can walk into this future of myself. And when I challenged that identity, a lot of these lies would come through about everything, you know, and it was really devastating. And I went into a dark place with myself for a second. And then it was my body was like a puffer fish, just like spiked out. Like all these old injuries came up, and all it was a distraction from keeping me to challenging that identity and like doing this work around identification for over identifying with the body came up, and then over identifying with my thoughts came up. And so it was all protection mechanism to not let the scaffold that was holding my system up for a long time, letting it fall down. And our identities you can see them as like a fortress. And so to get to that fortress takes precision, like a lot of precision, you know?
Yeah. And gosh, a few things came in that I wanted to say. Now I'm like, oh, what do I start with? You have to, first and foremost, I'll just speak to what you said about you personally, kind of like questioning that identity and like getting ready to kind of throw that out. It served you for that chunk of time. And so I don't want people to then go like, oh, I hate that version of me, or I hated that I was that way back then. Why? It served you, and for whatever reason, maybe you were incorrect in forming that belief system or participating in those actions. Maybe that was incorrect. However, if you're a different person now and you can reflect on that and grow from that, good. Like, that's a part of you. And then the other aspect is, it's like, we can't be so attached to we can't be fixed in any one identity. And especially if there are unhealthy aspects of that identity that you will, because then you're putting, you're giving your power away for someone else to then come and like tell you or show you or like, accost you that that's like not the right way to live. And then you become really defensive, and like that becomes like, I have to fight for this. And if you reject this, then you're rejecting me. And it's kind of like this dance with the ego of, or a phrase that was kind of I don't know. I want to call it a mind fuck. So excuse me, but the phrase of all of it matters and none of it matters. A teacher of mine a few years back presented that when I was being trained in past life regression. And I got so frustrated with him. It's my identity is I want to like know it all right now. It's really hard for me patience is like soul lesson of mine. And so I was annoyed with him because he wouldn't explain that to what that meant. And he was like, I tell my students this phrase and you will understand what it means in the course of learning how to do past life regression and learning information from talking to all these souls that you're going to be working with and past life experiences and lessons through your clients. You will understand the phrase, all of it matters and none of it matters. And I was like, fine. And sure enough, he was right, because now I understand it. And it's very similar. It's the ego. It's all of this matters, so I'm going to give this my all. But then when I'm so stressed out about this thing, I have to remind myself, none of this matters. I'm a human. I'm a spirit having a human experience. This is so silly. I got to relax, take my foot off the gas, take a deep breath. And then if we find ourselves apathetic, aloof, not caring, we lost our passion for life, then we have to go, oh, all of this matters. And then I'm back on that. So we have to do this dance. And how do you do that dance? That's getting in touch with your intuition. That's getting in touch with your own soul, your higher self. That says, put your foot on the gas. Let's go. You're taking life too seriously. You're getting too human about this. Take your foot off the gas. None of this matters. You're just here for the ride. You're just here to grow. You're just here to learn. And so that's, you can have harsh opinions of former selves, but to me that's wrong or silly, because if I wasn't that way in the past, like if I didn't know about myself that I was everyone's firefighter, then I would never experience the relief that I feel now in my body to lovingly say no and to lovingly set boundaries with people, to actually enjoy my own life and pour into myself with as much intensity as I poured into everyone else. So yes, it's good to change, but to be unhappy or displeased with previous versions, you don't know what you don't know. You're learning, and that's part of your soul's journey. That's part of your path.
Yeah, that's such a good reference of, taking your foot on the gas and just knowing when to release. That intimacy of that dance it's a great cornerstone of a mental practice. And going back to going into the identity thing, it wasn't like it was coming from a sovereign space. It was more so like dismantling the structure and rebuilding a new one. And then going, when I was able to do that, and that's why I said it comes with precision, because at the moment I would come in with like disgust around it, I would not be able to get inside. And so I saw it more as like a video game, like Link and Zelda. Like Link goes on this wonderful journey and meets all these people that helps him along his journey to get to Zelda that's stuck in this castle, and you got to get in the castle somehow. But it takes like these tools you got to use in your tool bag and meet these people who help you along this journey to get inside the castle to rescue Zelda. That's how I saw it in like this preemptive meditation that I had. And when I went inside, there was a spiral staircase, and each door carried these creations I had manifested within myself, how I saw my parents, how I saw myself as a child. And that's what was the dismantling, was seeing what was inside up the spiral staircase. And when that had occurred, it was just more so like a relief. And once I started to dismantle the identity, then I realized all these patterns that have been supporting these versions of an identity. And it becomes more devastating, and because of it feels like a sense of loss and a lot of grief around that version of yourself. But there was also a lot of gratitude around it, because that version was really helping me along the way and create a lot of character and a lot of life. But there's just a portion of time right now where that chapter is closing, where I'm transitioning into fatherhood and where I'm transitioning into a husband. And there's just a maturity leveling up, I would say, with that. And the way I had perceived this context of this experience is that I had to let go of my name. I had to let go of my race, my gender. It came down to that, how deep it went, of releasing my attachment to it. I was becoming like the observer. And there is something in like ancient Chinese wisdom cultures, they call it the Zheng Cha. And that is being the observer and being a complete non-attachment to the experience of this avatar we're in. And when you do that, that's when the true self starts to step into that experience, where the true self is now making decisions rather than the false self or the ego kind of sabotaging your life experience through self-righteousness and all these things that we believe that we require in order to get on top. And that comes from a liminal space. And when we talk about liminal spaces, it's like when you're driving through a town and you see an abandoned city. If you've ever seen or been around an abandoned city, that's a liminal space. It's as if like something was there, but there's nothing here anymore. That's why people will go into those places and say it's haunted, because it's just that eerie feeling around it. But going past liminal spaces is actually a space of spiritual maturity, when we can see like, oh wow, there was a space here, but however, there is something more to who I am. And the way I kind of see the soul is like, it's the soul and the true self are kind of intertwined, as I would say, they're like the same, right? And it's just it's a paradox of who we believe that the soul is, and the way I kind of see it is like the soul is just an expression of this shell of what we are walking around on this world, right? And if you put a beam of light on the wall is not the part that is creating that light. It's actually the beam of light that's being emitted onto that wall. So we have to see ourselves in a more different context. It's like the universe trying to express itself in a way that we quite don't understand, but it's coming from a different source. And that may be hard for people to understand, but that's the space I was coming into with trying to extract an identity. I was just going into like a really beautiful context of the self that is unlimited, by the bounds of this physical form. That's why it was so devastating.
Yeah.
Because I was actually feeling it, and it felt so dark because of the letting go, I think, of control. And I think that's really hard for people.
It's really hard. And let's touch on the grief aspect of it, because I've experienced this personally and walk clients through it on a regular basis. The grief of new profound awarenesses about self and within self that then create physical change in your life. We don't talk enough about like the grief, because then we look at ourselves and we go, oh, if I only realized this sooner, I wouldn't have been so hard on my mom, or I wouldn't have been so closed-minded or judgmental, or I'd be more relaxed in my body. I would have enjoyed life more. And there's such sadness there. And I go back to that grief is proof of love. So you're grieving because you love yourself so much, and you just think, oh, self, I'm so sorry that you held that for so long. I feel bad that you were tense or that you had that limited view or you limited yourself and your expression and your skill set and your goodness. The grief is necessary, but it's not negative. It's a proof that you actually are connected to self and love yourself. And you're taking kind of the wisdom of all of that into the next, energetic wavelength that you're going to be living on, the next version of reality. But the grief is there, and it does surprise people. It catches people off guard and then it makes people doubt, like, oh no, like, why do I feel so sad about this? Or should I even change? And I always tell people, yep, hold on. This is part of the process. Go with it. It means that you love yourself. It means that you're actually connected to yourself, that a wiser version of you is looking back at a less evolved version of you and just saying, oh, sweet child, like you didn't know. And it's okay that you didn't know. You know now, let's go. Let's move forward with this. But the grief is a big part of change. Big part.
Grief is tough it's tough to hold because we're not taught how to hold it, and taught how to feel through it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's devastating for a lot of people when they're being challenged with grief and loss, and to understand like the cycles of that's being pushed towards you to feel those things. It could be just a chapter that's closing, but there's also grief on like the beginning of things, because you've started off on a new slate and you feel like there's a sense of like uncertainty around this journey you're on a new chapter. And I think when we understand like grief and sadness, like it leads us to our hearts, which is one of the best compasses on how to navigate our life. And when we can harness that as our compass, and it points always to true north, points always to truth. And that's usually how we heal, is through truth and love. And so if we can walk in accordance to, hey, this grief is leading me closer to a space where I can transform and transmute the things that I had, coming through in my life, the karmic knots and the illusions that I got caught up in. And I think when we walk through, this storm of illusions and we get on the other side of it, it's like you reach the like somewhat of a finish line, but it's like, no, you have to go on another journey from there. And it's
a
like
whole new level. Yeah. No, that's the thing too. And some people get, I thought I healed, or I thought I already did this. And I'm like, oh, you understood it at that level. And then the universe, your soul, God, how time moves forward, you're always going to revisit old things. And don't get frustrated with that. Like I always say, like the old parts of us don't ever fully go away. They're not supposed to, because we're always kind of meant to measure up against like how we used to be. And we should do that, because then we can feel really proud of who we are now, or not. But that gives us direction of where to go and how to get to that place. So those old parts of self, they're not gone. And they will come up again, but you will be of different mind, of different heart. You'll have more wisdom. You'll have more insight. Hopefully you'll be more connected to your intuition. So then you'll be able to then kind of like catch it as it's coming in your orbit and go, oh, I recognize shame. Shame's back. How am I going to look at shame this time as it orbits around me? Because it's not going to be the same as how I looked at it or felt it a year ago, 6 months ago, 10 years ago. All those years that I, did in therapy, like I thought I squashed this shame feeling, and here it is again. It's not ever going to leave, but you're a different person now to look at that. And so you should bring all your newfound knowledge and wisdom and insight. So it's, like life is a spiral. It's not just from, this point to this point in a straight line. No, we're constantly weaving in and out of old lessons and old habits, old patterns. And we can either choose to get caught up in it and start from zero again, which is going to be really chaotic and awful. Or we can just go, oh, it's back to teach me something else, or it's back so that I can look at shame or look at perfectionism or whatever it is from a new lens. And so we kind of have to know the formula. Like that's how life is. That's something else that Spirit is saying a lot in sessions lately, is to understand the formula of life. I know that I'm here to grow. And I'm kind of, this sounds harsh and I mean it lovingly, But I just go, all right, like my dumb body, like, what are you here to do now? Like, and that sounds like I'm shit talking myself. I'm not, because it's with love and I do it as a joke, but it's like, oh, someone's really stressing me out. Or, oh gosh, I find myself back in this old routine. It's like, well, I know that my soul wants me to learn. So, all right, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this? And it is almost like a healthy, being the observer. I always say, like, I look at it from my soul's perspective. I get a soul eye view of what my lower self as Lisa in this physical form is doing. And then I ask my soul to then kind of reflect to me, what are the lessons that this specific experience is here to show me? Because that's the formula. Because I am here to go through very specific things because my soul wants me to learn the lessons. So if I know the formula, then I can handle whatever this is. And I know even if it's awful, even if it's tumultuous, even if it's heartbreaking and I'm, confused or foggy and I don't know what to do, it has value, it has purpose. So I'm going to figure it out, because the longer that it takes me, or if I don't involve my higher self, if I don't pray, if I don't meditate, if I don't discover the purpose of it, then I'm stuck in it longer. And so that's what I mean when I say understand the formula of life. We're just here to grow, period. In all ways. And so anytime we're in something that's uncomfortable, then we just got to go, oh, I'm here to learn. What does my soul want me to learn? What's the purpose of this experience? What is the purpose of these feelings? How can I integrate these lessons into my life? And then suddenly we're out of those phases. We're done with that aspect because we've understood the lesson, and then on to the next.
Yeah. And this is someone who's really advanced, right? So like putting it into context again is like all these things in life, they're just messengers, like text messages. So a lot of times when we're receiving a message, whether it's from our body, whether it's from life experiences, whether it's from, circumstances, when we resist them, that's going against the law. The trick is to ask questions of what the message is saying. And that gets you more into the algorithm of, I think personally the algorithm, the formula, what you're talking about is the Fibonacci sequence, which is a spiral in itself. But the trick, like I said, is to play with it and to move with it. Because if you're moving against it, you're creating that resistance that's going to cause more stress. So the moment we can extract ourselves from being sucked in is the point of the juxtaposition where we can transform. So asking the questions is so key and essential to this process of evolution, that we can start to more have that sense of curiosity within it. And then also we don't take it as serious. The moment we start taking seriously, we're out of the game. So the moment we start to enact, and that's why this whole concept about Link and Zelda, it became more of like a curiosity thing. That's how I was able to get into the fortress. So the moment we start to use that, our imaginative self, this childlike wonder, that's when we're now in the beauty of the mystery of it all. And that's the trick, is not to try to understand it, is not to formulate an understanding. It's to just be within the unknowing of it all and trusting it regardless. And when we can step into that, that's when we start to like stand strong in our sovereignty. And that's when we start to feel more grounded, because there is nothing you need to do except just to be yourself. And when we can gratify that concept and start to live it and embody it, that's the hardest part. And because it's application that actually leads us into a place where we can be a help to others. Because that embodiment is where people can actually feel when someone's embodying their truth. They can feel when someone's actually embodying leadership, because it's tangible. And I always try to teach people at work, younger members on the job who just finished, probation, finished their rookie year. I tell them, hey, always look to people who are actually embodying leadership, because those people are going to be your mentors. And the trick with that, I don't know if I've mentioned this before many of times, is I always tell younger members to just envision other people in the fire station as little children, because those who are acting like little kids, those are usually not the people that are leaders. If I can't see someone as a little kid, that means that they're actually going to be my mentors. So I usually go to them, and they've become my great teachers on the job. And it's a great trick to mess with and play with. And that's why it's so silly, but it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so helpful because it, number one, gets us out of our mental structure of keeping things so serious. And then number two, we actually can use that as a great tool to we can see others and ultimately see ourselves, because we also have to see ourselves as little children. And the moment I started to work through the healing part of myself was when I was in tune with my inner child, because I believe the inner child really holds access to the body and holds access to like the levers and behind our consciousness, just moving stuff all the time. And so that comes with relationship, that comes with connection with yourself. And, putting these things laid out on the table for you to see, it really makes a lot of sense when you start talking about it out loud. And it really seems so simple, but not a lot of people really, give you the framework of how to see ourselves. And, even going to what you were saying, like people are listening to you, like, how does she do this? How does Lisa come so in tune to all these different things, these different parts of herself? And that's why throughout the dawn of time, archetypes have been used for ourselves, these different versions of ourselves, because it helps us understand, what we're accessing, like the king and the queen of parts of ourselves that have authority and are very sovereign and kind and truthful and fair. And then we have the joker, the jester of ourselves, the person who kind of the fool, who kind of walks through life and just randomly falls into chaos, but is able to just escape it somehow with humor. Like that, these are just these things we can just use in our advantage, because we're accessing these things in larger cycles. I saw a guy, his name's Paul Chek. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a great, good, very intuitive person about human body and about spirituality, but he created this really large wheel of all the archetypes. And within that, there's the elements, and within that, there's the cycles, and within that, there's like the astrological zodiacs. It was a very phenomenal the way he had discovered this wheel that we're always in season with. And that was the key. We're in season with these things, and when we're not understanding the seasons, it's a law. It's a natural law. And so if we're in accordance with the law, now we can not create resistance within ourselves and create turmoil. If that makes kind of like a general context of terms.
Well, yeah. And I like what you said about, a couple of things I want to touch on, like being observing yourself without becoming. I had a teacher once say, observe, don't become. When I was, I had been doing mediumship for a handful of years after being taught by one specific person, then wanted to branch out and get, some flavor from other teachers. And so I had one teacher, and she was a pretty well-known medium, and she just always said, observe, don't become. Like blend your energy, don't become. Meaning like when I'm channeling someone, don't become that being itself, but blend your energy so that you get their essence. But the other aspect that I wanted to, when we do that, it helps us not take whatever is happening so seriously. And then we actually can become more objective versus reactive and like in our feelings, or righteous in our opinion of whatever. Because when we're in those states, we're never going to change, and we're going to hold those feelings really, really tight. But if we healthily kind of jump out and just observe it, you can, like I do with my soul, I just go, oh, look at her. Look at Lisa. Like, look what she's doing. Like, she is so funny. This human just trying, like insisting that she knows more, or that
I've done that so many times.
Yeah. And I laugh at myself. But then the curiosity aspect that you said, if you just start to look at be curious about the feelings that you're having. Like, I'm so depressed. I'm stuck in depression. If you can get curious about your depression, curiosity is a very high vibrational feeling, or direct. It's kind of a directive or direction. I don't know. Curious is like an action. Because if you're curious, then you're going to inquire, you're going to research, you're going to do something about. So curiosity naturally puts you in an energetic place of action. And so if you're plagued by intense emotions and you're just not feeling yourself, or you have all this, unresolved trauma, or you're currently working through trauma, but you're kind of stuck with something. Be curious about it. Like, get curious about why you feel the way that you feel, because curiosity is energy that shifts you closer to solution. And then you also take things less seriously, and you teach your body, I have agency over this experience. I am going to be the one that sees myself out of this, which that's the truth of any situation. You can have a therapist, you can have a healer, you can have someone there that holds your hand, but only you are the one that can actually change, because it all happens in the mind. You have to be the one that actually decides to do something about it. You can be inspired, you can, read all the self-help books that you want, but you in your mind are the only one that can actually move the needle into healing or lighter energy. And so becoming curious about your feelings versus only feeling them or ignoring them and then, having health issues as a result, or get curious about your injuries. Firefighters, get curious about your shoulder pain, get curious about your knee pain. Why does my knee hurt? And go through it because of the physical demands of the job. Like, go through the physical reasons why your knees hurt. Go through the emotional reasons why your knees might hurt, and then go through the spiritual reasons. And that's going to teach your body over time. I have control over. I may not have control over what happens to me, but I can get curious about how to resolve them and then learn more about myself along the way. And then you teach yourself, I got this. I am my own best healer. I can do this. So then the next time something happens or the next injury, you're not as panicked and you're like, okay, this is what worked for me last time. I can do this. So you're laying down kind of new programming, new memory within your body, and then you're building up that trust within self, which that's like full circle, because that's what we were talking about, getting into your body with it all and feeling it physically.
Yeah, it's you are able to explain things so well. And we've talked about this before. When it boils down to it, it comes down to you and your own autonomy on how you want to get past that hurdle. Everyone can kind of assist you, but you're the one that's going to embrace that change within yourself to actually catapult you to healing, right? That lack of a better term. But that's really where it boils down to. It boils down to you. And that was one of the contexts when I was explaining something around chronic pain with firefighters, was like, within the ancients and the mystics who have surpassed pain and suffering, they came down to this concept of the tattvamasi, which is a Sanskrit word that revolves around the self, or the Atman, the Brahman. And these terms are where you've reached the surpassing of the suffering, but you've gotten to this place where it comes down to you. And you have to, it basically says you're it in the end. And in the end, with your it, there is almost like this connection to the divinity within yourself, of recognizing that, and the beauty in that is like the Big Bang within who you are. And when you recognize that, that's where like everything just fades out. And that's where healing becomes, you become the healing, and healing is you, because you've gotten past the threshold of like it's everyone else's problem and the blaming and, the programs we have that we blame and the traumas. And I think with unresolved trauma, that's a hard one, because when you're trying to coach someone through unresolved trauma and you have to explain that to them, that's a hard pill to swallow. And I think when we give ourselves, that realization has to come for them. And in the end, that's hard when we're trying to help people. And so I was kind of curious what your take is on unresolved trauma, because that's been a big buzzword too, is trauma.
Yeah.
And people over-identifying with PTSD and diagnosis.
And labeling every hardship that they've gone through as trauma. No, you're just alive. I was having this conversation with, so I'm in my own practice with mediumship and Reiki and intuitive work, but I work also for Premier First Responder Psychological Services. And you've had Dr. Heather Williams on a couple times. And so I was talking to one of her clinicians about this not too long ago, just the overemphasis of everybody that has an anxiety disorder. And I'm like, It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
If you are alive and you've never experienced anxiety, I think there's something wrong with you. Like, to be alive is to experience moments of depression and anxiety, because we're human. And those of us that are sensitive humans, those of us that are empaths, we live in a very loud, scary, angry, busy world. And that by itself for an empath is going to create anxiety and feelings of sadness. So I don't like the over generalization of the word trauma and anxiety. It drives me crazy. So let's be accurate with what we've gone through. First and foremost, we have to accurately label what we're experiencing, or label it to the best of our ability at the time that we're experiencing it. So then we can create the right solution or get on the right path to help that. But we have to label it. What was your question? What's my take on unresolved trauma? In what regard?
Well, you're doing a good job already. Okay. So, I think it's you're framing it to where, like there's this overgeneralization, and then there's like people are getting sucked in those overgeneralizations with trauma, right? And because trauma, in my opinion, I've talked about this a lot, is that trauma is subjective. Mm-hmm. And then when you have all these other people that are labeling you, then you're creating an identity with that label, and then now you're sucked in, and then your mind's created something that's not real or may not be true. And so that's where we get stuck. And when we create fear and shame, that keeps us even more stuck. And now we're really caught up in the game. Now we created this cage with ourselves with this overgeneralization of these terms. That's what's really come up right now with trying to help this community, right? First responders. And not everyone has shell shock trauma, so I was just asking you what you think about unresolved trauma, like just in a general context, like what you think about it,
Well, I find it pretty dangerous to make your trauma your identity, because you get a lot of positive feedback for claiming your, or introducing yourself with all your ailments. And if you constantly associate yourself as, someone that has trauma or someone that has anxiety, you will never leave that identity behind, because you're getting so much feedback for it. And so then you're creating an even bigger hurdle to move over, to heal from, because then for sure, then it's not just an emotional thing to heal, but then it's an identity crisis that you're then going to be faced with. And that fracturing is really, really hard. It's doable. We can, you can repair that. But I want to caution people it's important. It's like human beings love to do this. It's like years ago, the push to talk about mental health, like that was great, because for centuries, everyone swept problems under the rug. But then the pendulum has swung really hard in the other direction. And now It's like, all we do is introduce ourselves through our traumas. And so then we're getting to know each other based on, your ACEs score, your adverse childhood experiences score. And that's okay, but we have to be really careful about that, because then you get so much positive feedback for all the hard things that you've gone through. You're never going to want to stop talking about those things, which means you're constantly going to keep those front and center on your life path, and you're never going to find a way out of that. And so unresolved trauma, everybody has challenging experiences in their past, and some people are currently going through challenging experiences. It's all part of life. And I don't mean to demean it. I certainly have had my own fair share. It's all part of the life as a whole. And it's, again, zoom out, jump on the energy of your soul for a second, take that bird's eye perspective. It is a blip on the timeline of your whole life, unless you choose it to be the entirety of your life. So I like to give people context, help people see that you can peek around it. You can peek around that trauma. You can peek around that hardship, that struggle, and see what it's like, and then start to move in that direction. But it's not a barrier unless you choose it to be so. But everybody has hard things. Some people have more. They're not more of an expert or further along on their path. They're not better or worse. But everybody has stuff. Even if you had a wonderful childhood, something awkward probably happened in high school or something awful happened in college or whatever. To be alive is to experience pain, period.
Mm.
To be alive is to experience joy. To be alive is to experience love and growth and harmony and conflict. And we learn the most in contrast. And so I like helping people identify, what did you learn from the hardships that you've gone through? And if you've never pondered, like, how did I grow? Well, let's, again, get curious about that. And that then it also changes your association with the hard things that you've gone through.
Mm.
You no longer label it as, the worst thing that ever happened to me. It might be a very bad thing that happened to you, but it led you to the version of you that exists today. And that's the most wise, the most centered, the most loving, the most accepting of self. So can you still label that the worst thing that ever happened to you? A lot of people don't, because they see who they are now and it's so wonderful, and you wouldn't become this if you hadn't gone through that. So I'm very cautious about like hard labels and identifying with all your diagnoses. That makes me uncomfortable because I just see it in so many people. They become more scared to actually let that go because they've received so much feedback or attention for those things that are plaguing them. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
No, I love the language you use. It helps a lot when you use certain language because it gets us into a grounded sense. And now we're tethering back into reality, which is, in my opinion, ownership and responsibility is what really is the first step into personal growth and understanding trauma. And the way I've kind of understood was it's really not the trauma, the isolated event that really is the problem. It's the events leading up to it. It's the things that have been supporting yourself to perceive that trauma in itself. And so when you look at those things in this web that's been created, it gives you much more understanding. That's when we have the opportunity to release something, is when we do get a bigger picture of, okay, why did I create this within myself? Why did I have that reaction that has been like a thorn in my side forever? And that's where our hearts start to kind of crack open, which is, it's hard for us to do that because if we've built this protection mechanism to not feel anymore. And I think with the first responder community, there has to be a different reference point with them because they're on the opposite side of the scale where they don't believe they even have trauma, but their bodies are getting broken down and their lives are falling apart. So what's going to help them to peek around the corner to see what's been bothering them in the subconscious for a long time? Or how do you get the tools to help them see what's subconsciously creating the same cycles, the same divorce, the same bodily issues? And that's where I think is a harder part with helping that community. And, I believe over the period of time that, plant medicine is going to be one of those things that's going to help them, and things like EMDR and hypnosis, because they need a little bit more of a jump start to get past years of being disassociative and being kind of in an illusion because they're in survival mode and they don't even know any of this stuff, any of this language to be used. And I think that's going to be something that's on the precipice. I'm potentially going to be on the board as an ambassador for Americans for Ibogaine coming up here. So
amazing.
We're going to see how that plays out. And I hope it's, I'm sure it'll be receptive because people, agencies, departments, they have a lot of money to throw out to mental health because they see it as a big problem. And I had this conversation with some of the guys from the union as well. They don't know what to do. And they're still waiting for, this big event where guys start committing suicide again. Because once that happened, it was like 6-8 months, a year, forgotten again. And then they forgot about, and then it's all this other stuff, this other budget things started happening and they just forgot. So, we'll still get these little newsletters about sleep and all this stuff, but it's you're barely doing anything on this giant behemoth of a beast that's going to erupt itself again unless something gets done. And, I'm on the idea that, trauma is subjective. If we create these meanings to things. And so we have to understand why we create meaning. And I think it's just our linear brain that wants to grab onto something because of the world we construct. The brain is so fascinating because it wants to tangibly hold on to things. And then that's where we get kind of wrapped into this web again. And so if you can help get into more of the feeling sense of stuff, feeling through emotion, that's the key. That's really one of the gateways to healing and to understand trauma is like emotion. Because the emotion that's stuck, there's other emotions that are kind of overwrapping that inner emotion. Like for instance, usually anger and rage is it's a mirror for grief, because you're hiding to not want to feel grief. It hurts, so we want to understand like how these things are operating in the context of it all, or the framework of it all, so we can have a better understanding with it. So a lot of times the body will hold, I've heard this before, like the issues are in the tissues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of body work done on me the last few years, and I've learned a lot from very talented people who really know the body. And I've been on people's tables where I had, grief come out when they're working on certain parts of my body that felt sensitive. And I remember this woman was putting her hands on my low back, and she was asking if I had an injury there. And this was before I actually hurt my back, but it was dormant. And when she asked me like what I felt when she touched that area, I said I felt embarrassed. And that was like a weird expression, but it's what I felt. And then lo and behold, later down the road, I realized I've been supporting myself with shame for a very long time. But that's when the injury started to come, when I actually started to feel the emotion. And so it's really strange dynamic of feeling through things, working through injury. And now I'm on the other side where I'm now restructuring my body to where I feel grounded, supported, and there's less pain. So, this dynamic it's very complex, but I think it's important we have these conversations because it helps people to get a better understanding. And they're like, dude, I totally understand what that guy's talking about because I've had back pain for years. I think I've been living in shame. It's like, it's so relational.
I don't quite do hypnotherapy as much these days. It's something that I'm working on. I'm trying to create a different healing modality that combines a bunch of stuff that I already do. And suffering from procrastination and fear that I can actually do it. So I'm working through my own things.
I think you'd be good at hypnosis.
I'm trained in it. That's, I got trained in in all of it in order to do past life regression. And I've had incredible success. I was on a roll when I was doing hypnotherapy. I worked with a lot of people that were single, and they're all married now. And they were working through these, they were unaware of how much shame and pain and trauma that they held surrounding relationships. And it's crazy. I was on a roll with a really good track record for a while. But I kind of lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
We're talking about how you're going to be a really good hypnosis. And you should keep doing that.
No, I am. I'm working on it. It's so funny because I'll get downloads about like how to create this healing modality. And I have this running list in my phone, in my notes on my phone of like things to add. But anyway, it's so surprising to people. And I'm going to be gender specific for a second, but it's very shocking to men. And I've seen it. So I'm speaking from personal experience.
Actually, I feel really offended for you being gender specific.
Well, get over it because I'm going to say it anyway. That men people don't realize, but men specifically, their physical pain is just pain because I have an injury. Because I tweaked my back on that call and that's why it hurts. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're correct. That happened in your physical reality. But what was going on underneath that? That then you reached a point in your timeline that your soul, that your spirit team was like, he's got to learn this lesson now. He's got to get this shame out of his body now. And so boom, injury happens and you don't recover, or you recover 50%, but there's always that pain, nagging pain that's there, or the ache that's there. It's because we didn't address the spiritual, emotional component of it. So whether the emotional thing is evident first and then you get an injury, or you get an injury and then you become aware of the emotional component, doesn't matter. There's always an emotional, spiritual component to everything in the physical. And hypnosis, hypnotherapy, EMDR, plant medicine are all incredible ways to get right to that root of whatever the injury is or the illness. If you have chronic illness, I've worked with tons of people with fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, lots of digestive issues, other autoimmune disorders through Reiki and when I used to do hypnotherapy, but just becoming aware of how the body expresses everything. And that's why it's so important to become self-aware, to be curious about your emotions, to be curious about what's physically happening in your body, because then you go on a mission to discover and to unpack what it is and then to heal it. And consider the injuries or the flare-up of your autoimmune disorder or, your back feeling depressed and you thought you healed that. Please consider that a beautiful thing because your body is actually trying to bring it to your attention. It's not fighting you. It's not working against you. It's not trying to get in your way or keep you small or get you stuck or get you back in that old headspace. It's going, hey, I need your attention. And so it's doing what it does, which is flare. And so when it flares, wherever it is, you just go, okay, what do you need? Okay, I'm listening. You got my attention. What do you need? That's something else that I love helping people understand is your body is not, when you have a surge of anxiety, you don't have a panic disorder. Your body's trying to alert you that something in your environment is not a vibrational match for you. And it's asking you to change it, whether that's a relationship, a job, a mindset, a belief, routines that you're doing that are unhealthy, activities that you're participating in that you shouldn't do anymore. Your body is always informing you. And it's your back pain is beautiful. You don't think that because it hurts like hell, but your back pain is trying to tell you something. And so don't fight what your body is naturally good at. It's alerting you. It's trying to work with you. And so when it brings it to the surface, let's handle it.
Yeah, that's the best way you could explain that, and like I was saying, that they're just messengers. So when you ask questions, it's going to formulate a process for you to lead yourself on. And, this year I had been helping a lot of firefighters, a lot of older men, and I had a hard time helping them because I think these guys, they weren't ready to heal. And they were so stubborn around healing to where, they weren't ready to let go. And so we had to stop and go right to understanding, like, what is your understanding of letting go and going into the basics of those things. And I formulated a program for some of these people to where it was a very in-depth program to where I had people doing human garage. I was working on their body. And then on top of that, that whole concept is getting the body out of stress. Because the body won't heal if it's in a state of fight or flight. If it doesn't feel safe, it won't let go. So you got to get the body into that state. And so most of everything I do is putting the body and your consciousness in that role. And it's hard for people to go into that role because it's so foreign to them. They have no idea what it feels like. But that's the journey back home, is when you're feeling safe in your body again. And so when I'm trying to get someone to get to that state, there's so much resistance with these first responders and primarily firefighters, and that generationally as well. Generally, like from men from 40 to around 50, that's where there's a lot of that resistance kind of happening to get into a field of safety. And so walking them through that process, man, it's a challenge for me as someone who's putting out an effort to help someone, and it's truly, if they would work through the whole process, most of them quit towards the middle, because once they got into a safe space, all this stuff started coming up, thoughts, emotions, and that's the hard part. That's the threshold we want to get you through. But that's the beautiful part, is getting and working through those stuff, because that's the stuff that's been keeping you stuck. And once I would get someone past that stage, that's where the healing was, where someone would walk in my house, they would look like a completely different person, and they would shed a ton of weight. People would lose up to like 50 pounds tops, because we've rid the body of toxins as well. Because we use Cambo as a means to help someone as well, just to get the body out of all the stuff, parasites, filth and toxins from the lymph. and we get it all out. And they just shed all this weight. And a lot of it was energetic weight. Like their shoulders were not just upright anymore. They're carrying the weight of the world anymore. And it was amazing when I would see people walk through that other stage of feeling like themselves again. But it's a foreign place to be there. And the people who do get past that threshold of working through the emotions and the lies that have been dormant, and they get to the other side, I always have so much credit for the courage they have had to face themselves. And that's when usually these clients become friends, because I've been able to walk them through that. And through that as well, like I've been there, so I know what it feels like, and I know how hard it can be. And so being a support system for someone, is such a strong connection there. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you're helping someone through some shit and you're like, all right, I've been here before. I know how to walk you through this road here
Absolutely.
of darkness, right? And in context of darkness too, like I recently came upon this really beautiful idea that came from Robert Edward Grant. I don't know if you know who he is. And he talked about like iridescent light. And I was looking at he was talking about crows who have iridescent light. And when you shine a light on a crow, it usually looks blue when you look at it really closely, when it's in some sunlight. And so it's not black. He would ask this guy, hey, what do you think the color of crows are? He would be like, black. He's like, no. He's like, when you shine a light on them, it's actually blue or rainbow-like color. And I was looking at my cat, whose name's Shadow, and he's a black cat. But when he's in the sun, the sunlight hits his fur and it's actually red and auburn. And so the whole context of this is that light and darkness are in contrast to each other, but darkness actually is the absence of light. So when you shine during a different wavelength or a different frequency, when it hits darkness, there's actually light there. And for us to go into our shadow or our darkness, there's light illuminating a gift there for you that's hiding there. It's waiting for you. It's dormant. And for you to be in that darkness for a long time, you have to be in there to actually see the light. So it's actually a gift. And that was a great realization and a context for me.
Well, and that's exactly what we're here to master.
Yeah.
Is to go into those dark spaces of self. Shame, shame is a big one for a lot of people. So surrounding many different subjects or topics. But that is actually that's self-mastery, in my opinion, is to make nice with the parts of self that you don't love, that you're trying to keep in the dark and hidden from yourself and others, the world. But really mastering self is to go, well, that shame that's tucked away kind of in the, back of my heart that I just don't want to look at anymore. If I actually look at it and confront it and make friends with her, with that part of me or that part of you, I become stronger. I become more courageous. And then there are not as many things out there in the world that will scare me in the future or that will rock me in the future, because I've already gone within myself and I've confronted that monster. And so suddenly then other monsters aren't as scary because I know how to handle it. I know how to master it. But that's, the annoying phrase of like, go inward to heal, or whatever you seek, it's already within. I love and I hate that, but it's true. It's true. And so if you won't be an expert, outwardly, you won't be an expert externally in any facet of your life if you don't master the within first. And so we're just wasting time by not doing that. And so we will always have failed relationships. We will always just feel blah about life. We won't know the joys of life. We won't know what true unconditional love is. We won't know the power of our own divinity. We won't know the strength and the accuracy of our intuition if we don't touch anything internally. And so this is the place to start.
Yeah, it boils down to connection, and when we start connecting to who we are and you start to see your true nature. A lot of these things start to just fall off by themselves. And that's the beautiful part about that. And then you go into the karmic knots and the mechanical knots that you got to work through. Like for instance, right now, like I know my shoulder is jacked up. Like there's a mechanical knot there. Someone has to get in there and actually like manually open it up, because the stuff I'm doing, it's not working. Like it's even working with one of the practitioners, she was like, yeah, it's gliding off itself. It's not actually connecting and working well. So we got to like actually maneuver it and open it up. And it was so uncomfortable when she did that. But there was mechanically something, like there's nothing spiritually there. You know, I worked through all the meaning behind these things. There's nothing emotionally there right now. It's just, now it's been stuck over time because of those past things. But now is the time where it needs some assistance. And that's where we have to trust that this journey of life is going to let people kind of come into your path and help you along with the stuff you need. Because we're all wanting to be in relation with each other and connection with each other. We're here to help one another. And, you know, when I'm helping someone else, like they're always teaching me some shit. And I'm sure it is the same for you. So it's
Absolutely.
a beautiful dynamic when we're just in flux with each other and this connection starts to grow. And it's really beneficial. And that's why I love going to you, because we've established like this beautiful trust with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just like, you know, whatever Lisa needs to do, just let her do it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. And I love how I feel after, because I feel like we've talk some things through, and like there's just some really beautiful revelations of just an hour session or whatever it is, and it feels great, you know, to connect with each other. And I really do feel like that's one of the missing links, is like we've been disarrayed from each other and frayed off from being in connection. That I think that's what needs to come back into our lives through like family, friendships, because I think those things are so important. And now it's bound by technology, you know, and there's no human connection here.
I get, when I get a little ahead of myself in my thoughts and I have to remind myself to get back in my body, I do worry about that change. Like technology is changing faster than we can adapt.
Mm.
And so we're missing, like, I don't even know how to articulate this, but like I'm worried about the human connection not gradually changing, but changing like very drastically, suddenly. And, you know, this type of a thing is going to become more and more rare. I mean, not in my world, because I'm going to do my hardest to make sure that I stay social. And even though I'm very, I'm a homebody. I love that's because I'm so sensitive. I just need to like insulate myself. But the beautiful thing about working in each other's energy is that part of this is my own development. It's my spiritual gifts, but it's also my personal growth that I've been open to over the years, is that I truly do see myself in most people I interact with.
Mm.
And that is humanity. That's the human connection. So when, you know, I meet somebody who's brand new to healing, I have a different approach with them, because I internally say, oh, that's past Lisa. Like that's Lisa in the past. And I know her so well. So I know exactly what to say to that person. I know exactly how to guide that person. Or if they're experiencing something with a relationship, it's like, I've been in similar situations. And so I know exactly, again, I know the road that you're about to get on. I'm going to tell it to you exactly how it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to tell you that it's not going to be hard, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you strategies on and tools on how to walk that path.
Mm.
And you mentioned this earlier, that you're very selective with who you allow to work on you.
Mm.
You should be.
Yeah.
Because especially with what I do, and I lovingly refer to what I do as woo-woo. I've like reclaimed that phrase because it is like used in a derogatory way a lot, but I don't care. I also don't take things seriously, and I don't get offended by much. So anything that anyone can call me, I've already called myself way worse. So bring it on. We have to be so selective, and we have to lead with our intuition with who we decide to work with to heal, and even therapists.
Mm.
And the beautiful thing is that there are lots and lots of therapists. And so if you meet with one and you don't vibe with them, something seems off, listen to that and go find another. Or you want to do more somatic body work and you work with a practitioner and they were great, or you worked with them for a year and then all of a sudden you feel like you need to take it to a different level and you find someone else. You have to be very selective with who you allow. And I encourage people to ask me questions. Like, I had somebody not too long ago ask me, what have I done to heal? And I was like, well, that's a really good question. And it was via text, like as they were trying to schedule a session. And at first, my protective side was like, I don't want to answer these questions. And then my intuition was like, calm down. They want to know, like, are you a good fit for them? Mm-hmm. And so I shared, and we've been working together. And so you should use your intuition and be selective with who you choose to work on you or with you, especially energy work. There's a lot of people in the woo-woo field who take this on as an identity. And because it's very trendy to be an empath, it's very trendy to call yourself intuitive. And that's not a secure bond to have with a healer. That's because that person is very fickle and their identity is going to change in 6 months or a year, or with the next fad that comes along. And so you should be very selective. You should be selective with who you choose to facilitate your plant medicine ceremonies. You should do your research. You should talk to people that have actually done it and get a good handle on the practitioner, the facilitator of whatever healing modality you choose, because it is a sacred journey. Mm-hmm. It's a very sacred journey. And at any time that you're working with somebody and your intuition tells you, hey, it's time to shift, we have to honor that. We have to, and then we have to change. We have to pick a different provider, pick up a different modality. But we should take it, it's a paradox. We should take healing seriously, but we shouldn't take it seriously. Again, all of it matters, none of it matters. Like, we should take healing seriously because we deserve to actually love this life. But we shouldn't take it so seriously that we have to be regimented and that it has to check all the boxes and fit a certain model, and it has to be, specific and precise, and I'm doing it wrong. You're not doing it this way. You should do it that way. That's too serious. Like, what do you want? And how do you want to feel? And then you go and find that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've come across on this journey of life is, in the end, the consciousness is the master. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things, they're just tools in order to get us some relief from certain things. But in the end, like, if we have something stuck in our consciousness and our consciousness is not healthy, then we will continue to repeat the lessons in our life. And when I speak of consciousness, I'm speaking of a grand term. Like, now we're recognizing that our mind is not being manifested through brain activity. Our mind is actually perceiving things within the field outside of us. And the field outside of us is actually what we're perceiving as consciousness. And what we're now seeing is this is all now being tangibly, viewed from a scientific perspective through electromagnetic wavelengths and all those things. But now we're seeing, like, okay, well, that consciousness is still even connected to the fabric of something bigger. And through quantum mechanics, we're understanding this, that, when you pull a thread of something all stitched together, you're actually creating a ripple of something that's being manifested outside somewhere else. So that's kind of what's going on here, is like you are a part of this grand scheme of it all. And you have to understand the medium and the wavelength of what you're operating in. So you have to instill this belief within this quantum field that you are a part of it. You're one within the entirety of the whole. So the consciousness in the end of what's in the field is a priority for us as we try to understand our journey of life. And doing inner work on yourself by asking questions and taking responsibility, that's conscious work. Mm-hmm. And so when you get the answers, you're going to shift things that are opening up in your body or being stuck in your body. And so, like, the moment you start to play with it in that way, that's where evolution starts to take place. That's where you start to feel the shift. And the shift is really, it's liberation from the cycle we've put ourselves in. It could be cycles we've had since birth. And I think,
And past lives.
yeah, past lives as well. And that's why these karmic knots are so intertwined with, who knows? And I think when we can understand, like, at a consciousness level, what's going on, because I just recently understood I have a pattern, that I've been working at with worry, and it's been sitting in the back of my mind. It became more clear that it's not more clear, but more noise has been coming up around it, and it's just a lack of trust. But my mom has it, and it's so visible, when I'm around her. I'm like, holy shit, this is like a generational pattern that I'm breaking, and that's why it was so hard to break, because it's been passed along this, by bloodline, and then when you're breaking those patterns, our parents didn't know. We should never expect that they needed to do that stuff for us, because they were built on, just going through paychecks and just providing for you to be at a place where you can break those cycles. But to break those cycles is a wonderful responsibility, and it takes great courage to do it. And so just understand, when you are doing that stuff, when you are doing inner work on yourself, you're doing more than just breaking a cycle within just yourself. You're breaking it generationally, and that's huge to recognize. And there's beauty in that. And so those who do come on this path of wanting to take responsibility for their actions and their thoughts and their reactions and their emotions, that is real, true sovereignty and great work. And I always commend people when they want to come on this path and to just better themselves, because it's a gift. It really is. And I think people will recognize it later down the road once they get past all of the mud. I always loved the Buddhist context of, like, the mud and the lotus flower, because the lotus flower blooms from the mud, and it takes a while for it to bloom. But they say, like, the mud is like, anger and grief and sadness. And once you work through those things, you're, an immersion of something beautiful comes out of it.
Yeah. And, healing is not for the weak.
For sure.
So actually, it's, if you're already a, kind of a go-getter personality, and you consider yourself a brave, courageous person, it's on track for you to heal. Because healing, most of the time we think, like, we get on the journey because we think we know that we're going to heal this, this, and this. But then we start to heal, like your example of working on someone's body, and then all the other stuff comes up. It's usually not at all what we thought we were going to accomplish back when we first started that healing journey. So it does require bravery, but it is the most beautiful expression of self-love to work on yourself.
Yeah, it really is. I think we were talking about buzzwords, but autistic is a buzzword that's come up. Like, oh, I'm autistic. Like, why are people saying that? Like, it's so ridiculous. But, I think we were talking about the telepathy tapes. And, like, that blew my mind. That I haven't listened to the new season at all.
I haven't either, and okay. I've saved them all, and everyone's like, have you listened? Yeah. I'm obsessed. I love, and she has a documentary coming out soon. I'm very excited.
The same woman, so she's doing the actual, like, visible documentary, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So she's been on all these other podcasts recently too. She was on Joe Rogan, and if you have not listened to the telepathy tapes, you got to listen to it. It's insane. Like, I was telling some guys at work about it. They're like, what the hell? But it's crazy, the stuff that's going. It blew my mind on what's capable for us as humans, and what does it take? Some, challenged, disabled children to, bring up the unseen to us. And I think one of the craziest things from that documentary was number one, that chat room they had called The Hill. That was insane. I mean, that was wild.
So I have a couple of friends that are equally as obsessed with telepathy tapes as you and I are. And we, for funsies, I led them through a meditation to try to connect to the hill. And we were successful.
Really?
One of my friends connected with, I would love to, like, track the person down in real life. I don't know how that would happen, but he tapped in, and he's never done anything like this before. And he actually tapped in, and he connected with a person that was alive somewhere in Boston. And he started to taste, like, in his meditation, was like tasting like spicy, like curry. First he was like, oh, it's hot. And I was like, oh, temperature or spice? And he's like, no, both. And then he's like, oh, it's curry. I recognize the flavor. And so I said, okay, let's go into the flavor. And what do you see? And he met I think it was like a teenage boy. I think he was of Indian descent, but living in around Boston, the East Coast area. And then this same friend slipped into mediumship and said, oh, there's a separate person here, but this person is dead. And that person was actually there to talk to me. And it ended up being, this is so crazy, a female. And she ended up being a victim whose case I worked when I was a victim advocate, and she was killed by a drunk driver.
Oh, wow.
And so I was connected with her family, and I walked her family through the whole court process. It was like a 2-year journey. And so I got to know her very well through her mom and her siblings and the whole court process. And so my friend, who'd never done anything like this before, was successful at tapping into someone that was alive and mediumship. Sorry, I hijacked your...
No. Can you explain what the hill is?
So according to the telepathy tapes, the hill is just this energetic place, a point of consciousness maybe, a location where non-speaker autistics meet up. So basically at the soul level, at the consciousness level, outside of their body, they go and meet up at this place that they all call the hill. And the hill is a term that is used by people in multiple countries. Because at first, as you learn through the listening to the podcast, they thought it was like a few local friends from like school districts around that all had autism and maybe knew each other, and they just like identified this place as the hill to like talk about and meet up on. And then they in their discovery throughout the podcast, they realized, no, it's like global. People from all over the world call it the hill. And it's this collection of consciousness or souls of non-speakers, and they meet up and have conversations, and they teach each other things where one person might know Spanish and one person doesn't. Now suddenly that non-speaker knows Spanish. And they learn other subjects, and they vent, and they become friends. And they also will share when they're in pain, when they're hurting, when they need a friend, when they need a buddy. And it's just this beautiful kind of energetic space that they meet up on and have conversations with. And all these kids, their routine was that they would go to their room, either like bury themselves with their blankets or just lay on their beds and kind of like zone out. And parents for a really long time just thought that that's how their autistic child coped with the stressors of life. And really these kids, they were fine. They were going up to go talk to their friends. And they speak clearly to one another, non-verbally, of course, telepathically, and it's incredibly profound. And the other aspect of the telepathy tapes that I loved was when they got into the spiritual gifts component of it. Because telepathy is part of the collective kind of consciousness and intuition and spiritual gifts.
Right.
And that was really, I loved hearing that on the podcast, because that's like my life. That's what I do. I was born with my gifts, talking to dead people, seeing dead people, knowing things about the living that I have no business knowing or tapping into. I didn't ask to know these things about people. It was just, I get reads about people, and hearing that. No, it's funny. I joked. I was like, do I have autism? Like, I can do that. And I was like, no, you're fine. You don't. But I think, and it's interesting, I used to work with kids on the spectrum. My last, like what I call my last real job before I quit and started to do my own thing professionally full time, I worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum. And intuitively, I always felt that there's something extremely high vibrational about these beings. And especially how it's very typical for people on the spectrum to not have a lot of body awareness. And so you'll see they stim a lot. So they'll flap their hands, they'll spin in circles, they'll do vocal tics, all kinds of like repetitive movements to stim, which is to self-soothe. But it really is also to like remind them like, oh, I have a body. I used to work with a kiddo who he would constantly like tap his fingers against his thumb all the time. And his mom was like, it's really annoying. It's really distracting. And I was like, he's just trying to feel his body. Like, this is just what he has to do. And I was getting all this information intuitively about kids on the spectrum being almost a different, and I don't mean to say this disrespectfully at all, but almost a different breed of human, a higher vibrational version of what I once knew a human to be, that they didn't need verbal language to communicate. They didn't need to follow the stupid social norms that we all have to follow. They literally came, I believe, that they come in to our dimension to show us how to expand our mind, to show us how to bring in more conscious practices and merge it with the human body, and to really teach us how powerful we actually are. And they do it in such a beautiful way. And they don't, and the non-speakers are so wise, so smart, so in tune, actually much more connected and dialed into the human experience than anyone ever gave them credit for. And huge props to Kai Dickens, the host of the podcast and the investigator behind the podcast, for exploring the subject matter and really giving, I would say, the autism community the credit that they deserve, because I think that they're actually very wise spiritual beings that are here to teach humanity how to be better, how to be more in tune, how to be more spiritual, how to not take for granted our ability to speak and our ability to feel our bodies. I can't say enough good things about,
I think how self-righteous it is of us to be like, thinking these individual beings and like assuming their stupidity, lack of intelligence, when the entire time we were just not speaking their language and we just weren't listening. And a lot of our problems in life is when we don't listen. Mm-hmm. And so when we tap into, we just silence everything and we start listening into it's like there's subtle whispers of things of, how to understand the world, nature and life and autistic kids. It's like, it's insane. But this whole telepathic chat room that they had created, but it blew my mind because they had another person on their team as like the documentary team who they had him try to go and enter the chat room. I got that guy at the door, and we'll probably close off right here. But it was crazy how he actually was trying to access this chat room, and then he was blocked by a being who was actually, protecting this chat room, this telepathic chat room, which I thought was insane. He was like, I came across this being and I was just stuck there until they let me get through because I had to have good intentions and enter this chat room. Let me go talk to this guy real quick.
Sure.
Well, we're at like 2 hours now on the podcast, gosh. So
that went by so fast.
It did go by fast, but it always goes by fast when we talk Lisa.
We just get going.
Yeah, I mean,
well, to be continued.
We'll do
it again. We'll keep talking.
We'll have to do another episode soon.
Okay.
Because I love having you here, and Haley has always loved you as well. So, it's been a while.
I love both of you. I'm so glad I met you. I always pray. I'm always communicating with God in spirit about my life and the gifts that I have. And I always thank God for giving me these gifts, and then for specific people whose paths I get to cross. Cause I don't think that we encounter anybody by accident. I think that everybody is here to teach us, to show us, to grow with us. And so I think it's wonderful that I met you, and then I got to meet Haley as a result of you, and I love it. So yeah, we'll keep going.
Thanks, Lisa. Really appreciate you and all your gifts and knowledge and your perspective. It's really helpful, I think, for a lot of people. So once again, I'm going to put all the descriptions and how to reach Lisa, but we're at 2 hours and people don't really reach the end of 2 hours sometimes, but a lot of people do actually. And they do like Lisa having on. I actually text my buddy Michael. I was like, hey, I'm having Lisa on the podcast today. He's like, oh, dude, I love Lisa.
Aww.
So, once again, I will put everything in the descriptions of how to reach Lisa. But everything else is going to kind of fall into place later down the road when we have her on again. Lisa, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to come here. And I love you guys. Take care.